Okay. Before we begin, let's take a few moments to worship the Supreme One, the Sublime One, the Undefeated One, the Lord Buddha. To this, can I request for you all to be upstanding and recite Namaskar with me? Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, you may now be seated. Before we commence, let's take a few moments to make a firm determination. So, may the great qualities of all the Arhats creep into our hearts, and may these qualities help us to go on our paths. May we have these qualities. May we become an Arhat just like them. And also, let's not forget that among this infinitely long journey in Samsara, we've not always been great people. We may have not been good people either. For having fallen to bad association, we may have done terrible things to many people. And because of that, maybe our paths to Nibbana may be blocked. So having humbly realized that we may have done things like that in the past, through our words, through our actions, through our thoughts. We may have hurt, slandered, abused, whether physically or verbally, to the Aryans, the people going on the path to Nibbana, and in turn blocking our own. Let's take a few moments to ask for their forgiveness. Okay. So today we're continuing the story of Uruwela Kashyapa. So you remember, Uruwela Kashyapa had two brothers, Nadi Kashyapa and Gaya Kashyapa. So one day, this Nadi Kashyapa went to the river near his temple. And so he went to the bank and he saw something floating in the river. Something that doesn't normally float across the river, right? He crouched down, but still couldn't recognize what it was. But these items, not just one, but quite a few, were bobbing up and down this river, slowly flowing down the streets towards him. It was somewhat recognizable, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. And then this item, this object, this unidentified object started to float towards him. And so Nadi Kashyapa put his hand out and grabbed the first object. He looked at it very carefully. He was speechless. He was surprised. Wait, this is the hat? This is the turban that my brother wore. This is his brother's turban. Imagine you went to a river and you see your brother's or your siblings' clothes float down. Or say something very valuable to your sibling. Because to a fire worshipper, to an ascetic, like Uruwela Kashyapa, their turban was a sacred symbol of their holiness, their supremacy. And it showed others that they were high in caste. And having seen that flow down the river, Nadi Kashyapa was so surprised he didn't understand what was happening. Why is it floating down? Is my brother in trouble? Because Uruwela used to be famous because of his teachings, because of his worshippings and his offerings. Maybe someone had come to attack him? So Kashyapa immediately stood up and he looked at the rest of the items. More turbans. More turbans? His students. Maybe some thieves have attacked and murdered each and every one of them, beheaded each and every one of them, and threw them into the river. And then he saw other things. Not just turbans, but rosaries, religious bowls. Then Kashyapa understood. Then this must be a war. Someone must be fighting my brother. And they must have won. And thrown all the religious items into the river. Now you can imagine Kashyap's heart beating faster and faster and faster, trying to figure out what was going on. At last he thought, you know what? I have to find out what happened to my brother. And he went to his temple and told everyone what he had found. All of his students. And if it was a war, he knew that he would need people as backup, just in case. And so he took the whole temple with him. All of his 300 students. Now, Uruwela wasn't too far, so they went there by foot. As they started to approach the temple, they saw something very strange. It was almost like the sun's ray was on the floor. He looked closer and closer and saw, no, it's not the sun's rays, but they were people wearing yellow robes. And as he went closer, he realized that there are more than 500 of these yellow-robed people. And they weren't even holding any weapons. They all had a smile on their face. Not like a smile as like a sneer, but a genuine smile. Kashyapa still couldn't understand what was going on. These other ascetics have come to this temple and... What's going on? There, Kashyapa looked around to look for his brother. Instead, he saw two people on the side of the gathering. They were discussing something among themselves. One of them looked extremely familiar, but Kashyapa still couldn't recognize who that was. He decided to approach them slowly. Step by step, he made his way. But every step he took, that one monk looked extremely familiar. And as he got very close, the one that he thought was very familiar turned around. Kashyapa just stood there, speechless. What had happened to his brother? That couldn't be his brother, because his brother was a fire worshipper, not a man in yellow robes. Or so he thought. Kashyapa started to recognize them. Wait. That means that's my brother, and all these 500 are his students. What has happened to them? They were fire worshippers like me. Now they are in yellow robes. Now Venerable Uruwela Kashyapa saw this, saw his brother confused, saw his brother. And so he approached his brother and said, "Brother, I have changed. I am now a follower of the Buddha, the greatest man who ever lived. His compassion knows no bounds. He is the supreme teacher of Devas and Brahmas. He has understood the truth, the one thing that we were all looking for, the truth. He has found it. Brother, I was deluded. I thought that I knew the way to become an arhat, and I was an arhat. Until the Buddha came to me and told me and showed me that I was no arhat. He knows the way. He is an arhat himself and he knows the way. Brother, I have found it. I have found what we've been looking for. Many, many years have we worshipped fires and we went following others. But today, brother, I can say with conviction that I have found it. I have found the truth. So, brother, join me, brother. Now, Kashyapa looked around. His brother looked completely different. He used to have a really long hair, long grey hair, and a long beard. His hair used to be in a turban. But now, he's cleanly shaved. He's wearing yellow robes, very tranquil and calm, and has a black arm pole in his hand. At that moment, Kashyapa understood. If my brother says that he knows the path, he has found the path, I shall follow him. Because it was because of him I am who I am. It's because of him I am now a religious leader of 300 people. It was all because of him. But if he says he was deluded after ordaining at a very young age and having 500 students, and if he admits that he's deluded, then, I am as deluded as he is. I thought that I was an arhat. At that moment, Kashyapa fell onto his knees, put his hands to his forehead and said, Venerable Sir, the Lord Buddha, please, I take your refuge. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dhamma, I take refuge in the Sangha. There is no other refuge for me. He says, being an ascetic or a hermit like this is useless if my brother thinks he has found the truth. So, having worshipped the Buddha, he says, Venerable Sir, I want to become an arhat as well. Now imagine seeing your teacher worship someone else. At that moment, you understand that the person who your teacher had worshipped was far greater than your teacher. Agree? So his 300 students at that moment worshipped the Buddha as well. They understood that the Buddha has found what they've been looking for. If my teacher is worshipping this Buddha, that means he knows something. He has found what we've been looking for. So each and every one of them requested for ordination, to be ordained. At that moment, they took their turbans off as well. They took their rosaries off. They took all their religious jewelry off and dropped it into the river. And at that moment, the Buddha ordained them. Now, further downstream, as we know, is the three Kashyapas' youngest brother, right? Kashyapa. So he gets a message from one of his students saying that he saw something floating downstream. He saw some turbans floating downstream. And so Kashyapa, out of curiosity, decided to follow this person. And saw, again, Kashyap's turban. And like Kashyapa, he also thought that there was something wrong, there's a war, a battle. Because Kashyapa was a famous person. He was very famous. He was almost like a celebrity. And people who disagreed with his teachings would used to argue, would used to fight, and you guess, he was someone who may have been in a lot of fear. And so Kashyapa thought, my brother's in trouble. And then he gets another message from someone further upstream, from another student. He goes and he picks up the other turban. Now this turban was different in color and shape. And there was that moment he recognized that in both his hands he is holding one, his older brother's turban, Uruwela Kashyapa's turban. And number two, he's holding Nadi Kashyapa's turban. You can always imagine his heart pounding against his chest. Kashyap's two brothers, turbans, and their students. Turbans are now floating downstream. Instantly, Kashyapa stood up and collected all his students and made his way to Nadi Kashyapa's monastery, his temple. When he arrived, he knocked on the first door. He opened and saw no one there. He went to the next door, nothing. Next door, nothing. He went through the whole monastery and saw no one. Now you can imagine what's going through his head. What happened? Did someone come and murder my brother and his students? And so he decided, let's go to Uruwela Kashyapa's temple. And with his 200 students, he went. The moment he went into this temple, instead of seeing fire worshippers with long hair, long beards, turbans, and fires lit everywhere, instead he saw monks with shaved heads, with alms bowls, with yellow robes, sitting down and meditating. And again he was surprised. None of them were holding weapons. None of them were holding knives, swords, arrows, bows, nothing. They all just sat down and they were meditating. Some of them were in circles discussing something. Some of them were listening to one speaker speak. Some of them were chanting. And then he saw his two brothers. Well, he didn't know if you can call them brothers anymore because he didn't know who they were. They were fire worshippers, now they're bald-headed monks. He approached them and said, why? What happened to you both? Both of you are ordained in another religion? Why? Why did you do it? Do you trust this person, this so-called Buddha and his teachings? Venerable Nadi Kashyapa put a reassuring hand on the back of Kashyapa. Brother, both of us, all of us, are deluded, have been deluded. We've been under a bell our entire life. But the Supreme One, the unvanquished one, defeated everything. He has found the truth of the world. Kashyapa, brother, he is one with infinite compassion, infinite kindness. He is a person who traveled miles and miles, not for anyone, but for us, to help us. Kashyapa, brother, he came for us, to save us. We thought we were arhats, but we are not. He has found the truth. And then Uruwela Kashyapa started to continue. Brother, his wisdom has no bounds. He defeated Mara himself. When he came to my monastery, he was able to subjugate the Serpent King. Devas and Brahmas would come and listen to his sermons. The great King Sakra came to listen to his sermons. The Brahma Sahampati came to listen to his sermons. Brother, I was deluded. I thought that even though all these people come to listen to him preach, he was not an arhat, and I was. Brother, if you remember a few weeks ago, there was a massive flood. The place that I gave him was underwater. But in the middle of this flood, the water had parted, letting the Buddha meditate, unharmed by the water. Brother, the Buddha has supreme knowledge. He has supreme supernatural powers. Brother, we have found the truth. Brother, he has found the truth and has told it to us. Brother, follow us. Join us. Join us on the journey, on the path to find the real liberation. Our freedom. Brother, he is like no other. The Buddha is like no other. He is the Buddha. Having said that, Kashyapa couldn't handle it. Both of his brothers have ordained under this Buddha. If the Buddha is someone like this, I want him to be my teacher. If the Buddha knows the truth, I want him to be my teacher. If the Buddha had shown my brothers that they're not arhats, that means I'm not arhat either. But I want to be an arhat. The moment he fell onto his knees and took refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma and Sangha. Because at that moment he understood. Because of his brothers, he understood that there was no other, nothing else to take refuge in except the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha. So like that, he took his turban off and put it in the river. All three brothers' turbans were in the river. His students followed him and did the same and ordained as well. You see, in the end, there were 1,000 monks behind the Buddha. Just wrap your head around that number. 1,000. That is almost as big as a school. A massive school of people, of monks, following the Buddha. So the Buddha started to make his way to Buddha Gaya, the place where he became enlightened. Now imagine, right? The Buddha in front, and the three brothers and all their students, all in line, one after each other. Each of them putting their left foot, then right. Each of them looking very tranquil, very calm, and very happy. That was a sight. You can imagine people who saw this were elated, were overfilled with joy, because that wasn't something they could see, that anyone has seen in their entire life. Each of these monks were disciplined. And it was on that day the Buddha preached Aditya Pariya Sutta. And at the end of that sutra, all of the 1,000 monks became arhats. All of the 1,000 monks became arhats, became people who had completely eradicated, annihilated their defilements. People or monks who have completely and utterly happy that anything can happen to the outside world but nothing can affect them. Unshakable, their happiness. Their happiness was unshakable. The moment these monks became arhats, Devas and Brahmas applauded with joy, seeing 1,000 arhats. Well, who wouldn't? Each step they take were like gems, was so rare, but so pure. And then the Buddha made his way to Rajagaha, the kingdom of Rajagaha, to see the king Bimbisara. This was because One day, Bimbisara went hunting with some friends and with his royal guards. And so you can imagine King Bimbisara saw a deer, loaded up his bow and arrow, and was aiming, and the deer started to run. And so Bimbisara and the guards went deeper and deeper into this forest, and then they saw a person. And so King Bimbisara got off his horse and approached this person. It was an ascetic, and it was very familiar, extremely familiar. And then recognized him. Wait, this is King Suddhodana's son. He's Prince Siddhartha. Wait, what? Why is he in this forest and why is he an ascetic? And so at that time, King Bimbisara was a prince. So Prince Bimbisara went to this ascetic Gautama and asked, Venerable Sir, why have you ordained? Is it because your father didn't give you his kingdom? Is it because your wife wasn't faithful? Is it because your servants weren't doing what you wanted? Was the food not good enough? Was it money problem? Was it family problems? Was it educational problems? Venerable Sir, Prince, why have you ordained? You see, come with me. Come with me and I'll give you half my kingdom. I have 80,000 villages. I'll give you 40,000 of them. So come and rule with me. Now, I'd like you to think about that again. Prince Bimbisara was willing to give up half his kingdom. That's almost like saying to a person, right? Excuse me, sir, madam, I want to give you half my house. So you can take these 2-3 rooms, and I can take these 2-3 rooms, and split the house into two. Your house, your hard work, everything is yours, but you're like, take half. Prince Bimbisara was ready to do that for a friend, because Prince Siddhartha was a friend. The ascetic Gautama replied saying, O Prince, I'm not here because of my father. Neither am I here because of my wife, nor food, nor anything of the problems that you said above. I am here, I am in search of the truth. I am going to become the Buddha. Now Prince Bimbisara, hearing this, was surprised. The Buddha? You see, many people back in that time, many religious readers, they said that they were this Buddha, the person who knew it all, but this Prince Bimbisara knew that they were lying. So if this Prince Siddhartha wanted to become the actual Buddha, he was more than happy. And so he wished, O ascetic, after becoming the Buddha, please allow me to have the great honor of receiving you in my kingdom first. So basically, when the ascetic Gautama becomes a Buddha, the first place that he should visit is his kingdom. And so the ascetic Gautama silently accepted it. And therefore, after the ascetic Gautama became the Buddha, he went to Rajagaha to meet the King Bimbisara to fulfill his promises. Now, what does that say about promises and your word? Even the Buddha kept his word. The Buddha kept his promises. So what does that mean? We should also keep our promises. If we say something, we must do it. You see, if the Buddha wanted to, he could have just not gone, but he kept his word, he kept his promise. And so the Buddha, with his 1,000 monks, made their way to Rajagaha. So behind the Buddha himself was Uro Kashyapa, Nadi Kashyapa, and Gaya Kashyapa. These three were like celebrities. They were people with high reputations, very strong reputations. So, having seen Uro Kashyapa and the Buddha, thought, is the Buddha the follower of Uro Kashyapa, or is Uro Kashyapa the follower of the Buddha? Because that's how famous Uro Kashyapa was. That's how famous these three brothers were. The Buddha saw the doubt that was appearing in the king Bimbisara's mind. And so he asked a question to Uro Kashyapa. Uro Kashyapa, a few days ago, you were someone who worshipped fire, the fire gods. You worshipped fire and you did all these things, these rituals. Why don't you do any of them now? Having heard that question, King Bimbisara was surprised. Uro Kashyapa stopped worshipping fire? He was a fire worshipper. He was a very, very dedicated fire worshipper. And having heard the Buddha say something like that, King Bimbisara was surprised. What? Really? Uro Kashyapa isn't worshipping fire anymore? And then Uro Kashyapa replied saying, Venerable Sir, it was all thanks to you. Venerable Sir, I was on the wrong path my entire life. For the many, many years I was worshipping fire. I was on the wrong path. It was because of you, Venerable Sir, that I found the truth. I have found my liberation. I have found my freedom. Venerable Sir, I am your follower. And that moment, he worshipped the Buddha. And in an instant, he went into the fourth samadhi. Just saying, back in that time, to someone with samadhi or states of samadhi, they were considered very high in their meditation. So when King Bimbisara saw that this Uro Kashyapa went into the fourth samadhi instantly, that was also surprising. And he went into the air and started to perform supernatural powers. You can almost imagine that it was like fireworks. Everyone staring up in awe. Every citizen in Rajagaha came there and were looking up at Uro Kashyapa in awe. He demonstrated all of his supernatural powers. He would go up in the air, project himself 2-3 times, do various things. At that moment, the king Bimbisara and 125,000 other witnesses understood that Uro Kashyapa was a follower of the Buddha, which means the Buddha must be very different. His philosophy must be very different, and his followers must be very different. Uro Kashyapa projected his voice and said, for anyone who doesn't have the wisdom to understand who the Buddha is, do not think that the Buddha and I are equal, are the same. For all his qualities are like the great Meru mountain, and I am like a small heap of dirt. His qualities are like the 4 great seas, whereas I am like a bit of water collected in a hoof sprint. So what he means by a hoof print is, let's say a cow or a horse or some sort of animal. When they step into mud, they leave a hoof print. The water is collected in that. He compares that to the oceans. The Buddha is like the entire earth, and I'm like a blade of grass. The Buddha is like the sun. I'm like a small fly. The Buddha is like the moon. I'm like a very small mirror. The Buddha is like trees. I'm like a small weed. The Buddha is like the sky, and I'm only a finger tall. This is my teacher, and worshipped him 3 times and sat down. At that moment, the Buddha started to preach the Dharma. King Bimbisara and the other bystanders, so the other 125,000 people, citizens, at that moment became Sotapan. That was when King Bimbisara's 5 wishes were fulfilled. So one of them was to become king. The other one was to see the Buddha. And number 3 was to understand Dharma, and so on and so forth. And because all of his 5 conditions, all of his 5 wishes were fulfilled, he was elated. He was over the moon. And therefore, he offered alms. It was more of a festival, more like. People from all around, his entire kingdom, were partying. It was said that the great King Sakra, in disguise as a small child, came down and started singing and dancing with the people. But this offering of dana wasn't enough for King Bimbisara. His happiness couldn't be satiated by just an offering. King Bimbisara went into his garden, his best garden, and offered that to the Buddha. He offered his Veluwana garden to the Buddha. And there he created a monastery, a magnificent monastery called Veluwana Monastery. After that, the Buddha gathered all of his monks and gave the title, the foremost among monks, who had a large number of followers ordained with him, is my son, Uruwela Kashyapa, because of him, 1,000 people ordained, students ordained. Therefore, he got the title. You see, it all started with dana, with alms. His entire journey started with alms. What I mean is, Uruwela Kashyapa, his entire journey in that life was because he offered a place for the Buddha to stay. And every morning he would invite the Buddha to come to take morning alms. But if you go further back, 100,000 years ago, at the time of the Buddha Padamuttara, a time when there were many other teachers, he saw a monk called Sila Gosha and wanted to become like him. He was a Brahmin in a high caste, but he offered for 7 days straight, consecutively, and then got the prophecy of becoming Uruwela Kashyapa. Again, at the time of Pusa Buddha in Benares, he made another offering and went to Tusita. And at the time of the Buddha Gautama, he passed away as an Arhat, never to return to the dreadful Samsara again. Never to return. Does that not prove that to go on the journey to Nibbana, you need merits? You need to do a lot of good things. If it wasn't for the merits, Uruwela Kashyapa would still be worshipping fire and he will still be in Samsara today. But because of his merits, the Buddha himself went to Uruwela Kashyapa. It wasn't Uruwela Kashyapa who went to the Buddha went to Uruwela Kashyapa. And look at the pride that Uruwela Kashyapa had. Pride will always be one of the greatest blockages to your path to Nibbana. You see, Uruwela Kashyapa thought that he was an Arhat and the Buddha was just a normal person. Well, not normal, but was an Arhat. Pride is something that will not do any good to anyone except slow your path down. You see, in the end, Uruwela Kashyapa became an Arhat. Became someone free from all defilements. So what about you? When can you tell someone, I am the son or daughter of the Buddha? And how powerful are your words? Think about it. Uruwela Kashyapa just ordained and told his brother, look, this is why I ordained, why don't you join me? And his brother didn't think twice. He wasn't doubtful at all. You see, that is what is great about Uruwela Kashyapa and many other people. They find the truth, they don't keep it to themselves. They spread. They spread it to everyone, or people who deserve it. Because you can only get what you deserve, not what you desire, right? It's what you give is what you get. So Uruwela Kashyapa gave, and look what he got. When he found out the truth, instead of keeping it all to himself, he explained it to his brother, to both his brothers, to 1,000 students. Well, no wonder he became an arhat, right? Okay. So this was the final part of the story of Uruwela Kashyapa and Nadi Kashyapa and Gaya Kashyapa. The three Kashyapas as well. Okay. So another few days, we have Vesak coming along as well. I would like to invite you all to join in, to celebrate the birth of Prince Siddhartha, to celebrate the enlightenment of the Buddha, and to celebrate the time when the greatest person who ever lived passed away, Vesak. Okay. I would like to take a few moments to transfer merits and conclude. Okay. Let us take a moment to transfer the merits we've all acquired by making offerings to an infinite virtues of Noble Triple Gem, chanting Prith, listening to the Dharma, and engaging in various meritorious deeds today. So first and foremost, let's remind ourselves how incredibly fortunate we are to be in receipt of the Lord Buddha's teachings. And with immense gratitude, let's transfer the merits to the Bhikshu, Bhikshunis, Upasakas, who since time immemorial have protected and preserved the sublime teaching of the Buddha, and passed it down to a generation of the noble lineage in the form of the Tripitaka, which is thankfully available to us today to study, to understand, to comprehend Dharma. Let's also take a moment to transfer merits, all that we acquired to all members of the Mahasangha present throughout the world, including the chief prelates of all the chapters, who've dedicated their lives to no path and committed themselves to the betterment of all sentient beings. Let's not forget that among them will be the monks and nuns resident in your local temples and nunneries, who have always been by your side through thick and thin, come rain or shine. Let's take a moment to transfer the merits to Guru San Nanse and all the monks resident in the monastery, as well as the Anagarikas and Agarikas attached to the monastery. Let's also take a moment to transfer merits and express our gratitude to all those who made great efforts to disseminate the teaching of the Buddha, be that by translating these sermons, sharing them out with others, inviting others to join them. May through the power of these merits, if any of them have been born on the woeful plane, may they redeem themselves and be born in the blissful plane. May through the power of the merits, may they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill their meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits that we've acquired to our devotees, friends of the monastery, who for the sake of merits continue to sustain the Mahasangha. This includes every one of you who have contributed to the construction of the monastery, to those of you who provide the Mahasangha with shelter, alms, robes, medicine, as well as those who pass on their know-hows and extended their well wishes. May through the power of these merits, may they abstain from the meritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also take a moment to transfer merits to our mothers, fathers, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, sons, daughters, grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, nephews, nieces, our elders, friends and acquaintances, employers, employees, and all those who have helped us, support us, assisted us in any way, shape, or form. By the power of these merits, may they be healed in any physical and mental ailments. May they overcome any obstacles to their spiritual progress. May they abstain from the meritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's all take a moment to transfer merits to Devas, Brahmins, spirits, demon, prana, and Sakradeva, as well as numerous gods and deities who have committed to protect and fulfill the Sambandha Sastra. Let's all take a moment to transfer the merits to God and deities who keep a watchful eye over us to keep us out of harm's way. May the power of the merits, may they prosper in divine power and wisdom. May they abstain from the meritorious deeds, fulfill meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's all take a moment to transfer merits to our ancestors who predeceased us, to all those who have been our friends, our families, our acquaintances in long journey to Samsara, and to all those who helped us, support, assist us in any way, shape, or form, in any way they could. Let's take a moment to transfer their merits. Let's all take a moment to transfer the merits to members of the armed forces, who was the police force, who sacrificed their life to protect the peace and harmony of our nation. May all those who lost their lives in war, be their friend or foe, rejoice in the merits we acquire today. Let's all take a moment to transfer merits to those who lost their lives in natural calamities such as tsunamis, earthquakes, landslides, pandemics, reminding ourselves that among them will be those who have been friends and family to us in the long journey to Samsara. Let's take a moment to transfer merits to them. May the power of the merits, if any of them be born in the woeful plane, may they redeem themselves and be born in the blissful plane. May they abstain from the meritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Finally, Zoro resolved, may through the power and blessing of all the merits required throughout the day, we bear to witness the event of many hundreds of thousands of arhats in this blessed land. And finally, may through the power of all the merits required today, you and I and everyone who made this program a success become an Arhat Mansi or an Arhat Mahin. In his very life, in the era of the Gautama Supreme Buddha himself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May the blessings of the Noble Chibujan be with you all.